he's pissed. He thinks he failed.
The Avengers, Earth's mightiest hero. A group of remarkable people brought together to fight the battles we never could. Remarkable people, who have been known to screw up quite spectacularly.
Just saying. Is that what you want?
Of course, flawed heroes are always more interesting than beacons of perfection, who never make mistakes.
That's what we needed.
Well, that didn't work out, did it?
I said we'd lose.
But the problem is, when you're an Avenger, your mistakes tend to have extreme consequences.
We took a hit. We'll shake it off.
It's okay for us. The worst mistake we can make is not checking a video script properly, and that never happens. Anyway, here are some of the worst decisions the Justice League have made recently.
Just go back, please. Can we just cut? Can we just cut?
No, really, just
No, really.
What happened to picture? Go to overlap.
Let's start with the biggest and most recent example. Spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home ahead, so adjust your television sets accordingly. In the wake of his unmasking by Mysterio in Far From Home, and the public hate campaign waged against him by J. Jonah Jameson, Peter Parker turns to a certain Mr. Doctor Strange for help. Specifically, he asks if Doctor Strange can cast one of those magic spells of his, and make everybody forget that Peter is Spider-Man.
Some people still know.
That's not how the spell works.
Now, is it Peter's fault for asking, and for changing his mind multiple times during the casting of the spell, causing it to malfunction? Or is it Doctor Strange's fault for agreeing to cast the spell in the first place? There are strong arguments for both, though Strange should definitely know better, being a fully adult sorcerer. But ultimately, the consequences are the same, whoever's mistake it is.
There was no other way.
And what are those consequences? Oh, nothing major, just serious disruption to the multiverse, which will come back to bite Doctor Strange in a big way when his new movie drops next year. But that's all, right? Nope, let's add copious destruction, the near-fatal wounding of an alternate universe Peter Parker, the death of Aunt May, and the manipulation of countless memories to the list. Plus, completely messing up Peter's life, cutting him off from every human connection that he had.
You know, all this is kinda your mess.
Oh, and to top it off, there is now a piece of Venom symbiote in the MCU. We're sure that won't be causing any issues down the line. Great job, Steven and Peter, kudos. Of course, it's not just the heroes of the MCU who make mistakes. 2021 also gave us a new adventure for the villainous Loki, or at least a variant of Loki.
And now I'm surrounded by variants of myself, plus an alligator.
A variant who became, if not a hero exactly, certainly a conflicted anti-hero. At the climax of the first season of his show, Loki traveled to the end of time, accompanied by Sylvie, another Loki variant. To make matters more confusing,
You sure you're a Loki?
You're in my way.
You are my way.
there they met He Who Remains, a far future incarnation of the villainous Kang the Conqueror, possibly descended from an alternate universe version of Nathaniel Richards. Hey, we said it was confusing.
Not what you were expecting,
This puckish, probably insane fella offered Loki and Sylvie a choice. They could take over from him and lead the Time Variance Authority, keeping the various different timelines in check, or they could kill him,
Reincarnation, baby.
allowing the timelines to merge into one big mess of space and time, and resulting in a potentially infinite army of Kang the Conquerors trying to invade the multiverse. Loki was inclined to believe the guy, but Sylvie, blinded by vengeance, decided she'd rather kill him. The consequences for this are going to be pretty heavy. Multiple evil Kangs attacking multiple timelines, in who knows how many different movies. We know we'll be seeing a version of Kang in Ant-Man Quantumania in 2023, and the second season of Loki will also deal with the fallout, though we don't yet have confirmation of when we'll be seeing that. And we wouldn't be surprised if Kang showed up in the forthcoming Fantastic Four movie too. Gotta hand it to Loki. We mean Lokis. Even when they try to do good, they manage to mess things up. Grief is a terrible thing, a serious and traumatic experience, and something that all of us have either gone through or will go through eventually. But crucially, we won't imprison an entire town in a psychic prison and force them to take part in various sitcom scenarios while we work through our grief.
Bravo!
Or at least it's pretty unlikely. Wanda Maximoff, on the other hand, went there. And sure, we can empathize with her behavior.
I understand, my child.
She lost her parents at a young age, then she lost her brother, then her new superhero family was torn apart, and her lover Vision was brutally murdered by a big purple goon. That would hit anybody hard. But her decision to lose herself in the fantasy of Westview had serious ramifications, and the MCU is going to be dealing with them for a while. There's the people who are trapped there, for starters. They're gonna need some pretty intense therapy to get over that experience. Then there's the fact that Wanda messed with the fabric of reality itself, creating children out of thin air. Children who are now lost somewhere in the multiverse. Oh, and let's not forget the whole ordeal resulted in Wanda taking on the mantle of Scarlet Witch, a major step on her journey to potentially becoming an antagonist. We've seen how powerful she is now, and if she decided to go full supervillain, it's gonna be a problem. We kinda liked it better when it was just fluffy sitcom fun. Speaking of grief and trauma, you've got to feel sorry for Clint Barton. He lost his entire family to the blip. That's not something you just get over. It's understandable that he'd react badly. But taking on the Ronin persona and heading off on a bloody murderous rampage across multiple continents, cutting himself off from his best friend Natasha and the rest of the Avengers, getting that haircut? Bad decisions, Clint. Bad decisions that came back to haunt him in a big way this Christmas in his own Disney Plus show. And not only did his actions as Ronin cause Clint some festive problems, they also put next generation Hawkeye Kate Bishop in serious danger.
Come on!
Not to mention Clint's own family, the people he was grieving for in the first place. Seriously, Clint's bad decisions nearly ruined Christmas, which is about as big as a sin as we can imagine.
I'm sorry.
And while the Hawkeye show was a lot of fun, Clint arguably still hasn't faced any real consequences for what he did. He murdered a lot of people, even if they were criminals. But hey, the show was a lot of fun. And it's not like he destroyed the multiverse or erased anyone's memory, or abandoned a family member who went on to become the leader of a global crime syndicate. Which leads us neatly to Shang-Chi, a new hero for Phase 4.
Welcome to the circus.
A highly skilled fighter and master of martial arts, possessing the legendary 10 rings. A stand-up guy really, kind to his friends, well-liked by his friends' families, good at karaoke. Except for that whole thing where he abandoned his little sister, leaving her with their immortal warlord father and his criminal organization, after promising that he'd come back for her. That's pretty harsh. And sure, you can understand Shang-Chi's decision, even if it was a bad one. He had been looking to escape his father's control for years. He saw an opportunity to get out. But you know, it wouldn't have killed him to go back for Xialing. Or, well, maybe it would have killed him. But surely that's a risk you have to take in these situations. Whatever your opinion, leaving his sister was not the moral thing to do. And as a result of her abandonment, Xialing went on to become a pretty bitter and angry individual, who is now in control of her father's global criminal organization, the 10 Rings. That's going to have some pretty extreme ripple effects in the MCU going forward. Good work, Sean. And while we're on the subject of sister abandonment, let's turn our attention to the late Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. The stakes here might not be as world-shaking as some of the other entries on this list, but we would still class Natasha's failure to rescue her adoptive sister Yelena from the Red Room as a pretty bad decision. Sure, it would have been difficult to find her, maybe even impossible. The Red Room moved around a lot after all. But as with Shang-Chi and Xialing, you would give it the old college try, wouldn't you? And the reasons Natasha gives Yelena when confronted in the movie are, well, let's just say they're pretty weak sauce. After all, this wasn't just about saving Yelena from torture, mind control, and the moral hell of becoming an assassin, though that would be sufficient reason. But there's also all the innocent people who Yelena went on to kill. She even came close to murdering Natasha's best buddy, a certain Clint Barton. You want to talk about red in your ledger? Oh well, at least Natasha threw herself off a cliff to save the universe. That kind of balances things out. And when it comes to fighting Thanos, Natasha throwing herself off a cliff was a heck of a lot more than any of the Eternals did. In fact, by our count, the Eternals did exactly nothing. The justification given in the movie is that their mission on Earth was to respond to threats that were directly related to the Deviants. The actions of the Mad Titan didn't fall under these criteria, at least not in the movies. But let's not get into Thanos and his comic book status as a Deviant. We'll be here all day. Ultimately, if the Deviants weren't behind the threat, the Eternals couldn't interfere. We understand the reasons behind that decision, or maybe it's more accurate to say that non-decision. But come on, that doesn't stop it from being a bad decision. Imagine if the Eternals had been in the Avengers' corner during Infinity War, or even during Endgame. Would have been pretty helpful, no? And would it really have conflicted so badly with their mission? Surely half the universe being snapped away in an instant wasn't part of Arisham's plan. Unless maybe it was part of his plan? Oh man, now there's a rabbit hole to go down in another video. So those are some of the most recent bad decisions made by Avengers, Avengers villains, and Avengers adjacent heroes. But don't worry, we have long memories, and we've got some honorable mentions of terrible decisions from earlier phases in the MCU.
This seems serious, Phil.
So let's take a deep breath and go! Tony Stark creating Ultron, resulting in the destruction of Sokovia. Captain America not telling Tony that Bucky killed his parents, resulting in the dissolution of the Avengers. Thor not going for the head, resulting in the loss of half the universe. Tony leaving control of a state-of-the-art drone network to teenage Peter Parker. Tony abandoning Aldrich Killian on the roof. Tony. A lot of these mistakes involve Tony Stark, huh?
Hey, I admit it. My fault.
Oh well, at least there's a whole new generation of bad decision makers to take up his mantle now.
If anything, it's kind of your fault that I'm here.
What did you just say?
I take that back.
The MCU is in safe hands. Okay, so we've had plenty of bad decisions, but what's the most inconsequential decision the Avengers have ever made? A decision that had absolutely no impact on anything. A decision so trivial that it's hard to even remember it happening in the first place. Honestly, we can't remember. See ya!